Welcome back to episode 28 of the Oracle Scroll. Today, we're going to look into the Minor Arcana and fill out the rest of that deck that we've been discussing. Then we're going to take a look at the practice of victim blaming and see how that affects our daily life in today's modern society. And then we'll wrap up with some other interesting tidbits to throw in along the way. So please join us for episode 28 of the Oracle Scroll. Welcome to the Oracle Scroll. My name is Kevin Walder, and I am your host, and I invite you to join my guests and myself as we discuss all things metaphysical. If you're a subscriber and have been following along with us, you have watched us talk about each of the 22 cards in the Major Arcana and explain them in detail and how they work. But there are a lot more cards in the deck. The Minor Arcana makes up the bulk of the deck. So let's talk something about the Minor Arcana. So, how are you going to get acquainted with your own personal deck? Well, here's a start. When exploring the Minor Arcana, we can make use of a very simple system for assigning meanings to the numeral cards, which will make it easy to follow in a reading situation. The first set of three, the Ace, 2, and 3, those are work cards. Those mean that you're just embarking on something that is time-consuming and attention-consuming, resource-consuming, but it's work. Then 4, 5, and 6, those are adjustment and recuperation cards. So after all that work, you get a little chance to go, thank goodness, we've got adjustments to make, but the grind is over and we can move forward. Then 7, 8, and 9, those are achievement cards. Those say that you've accomplished what you set out to do in the first place, and you're moving forward at a reasonable pace. And then the 10s round out the numeral cards as completion and new beginnings cards. I always talk about the 10s being very much a two-part meaning. Endings and new beginnings. Things that have run their course and are being adjusted or simplified or changed in some way for the future. So I've assigned some very basic meanings for the numeral cards. And you'll find that each deck will give you some slight differences in the artwork, perhaps, that will, maybe lead you to a different conclusion. But in general, these are the meanings. So the Ace. The Ace is establishing a new beginning, a new decision, a new concept, a new idea. Then the 2 is acting on that new decision, making the connections that actually put it all together and make things work. The 3s are all about the very first fruits that come from a new start. It doesn't mean your work is over. It just means that you're starting to see some progress and you're starting to see some results from the work you've already done. So the work can continue. 4, taking a much needed rest and reflecting on where you've been, where you are, how you got there, and where you want to be. How does where you are compare with where you want to be? What kind of distance do you still have to cover? Those are all part of the 4. And they're basically just sitting back and actually taking stock of your situation in life. Then the 5 comes along. Oh boy, there are challenges in every life. And this 5 is a challenge, and it means that we have to correct our course a bit. So every single undertaking that any human has ever done has required some adjustments and some corrections and some movement to align with the things that we really want. And that's what the 5 is the realization that, oh my goodness, I'm a little off course. How do I correct? And that's a really important thing to remember about the 5, is sometimes the artwork can lead you to believe that it's a total disaster and everything's just gone to pieces. But it really isn't that dire. It's just saying, hey, pay attention, take a look, make sure you're on the right track, and adjust as necessary. I call it a speed bump. It's just kind of a reminder that, oh, wait a minute, you need to pay attention. Then the 6 comes along. And after that grind of the 5, the 6 is like, a huge sigh of relief. And it stands for recuperation. Your challenge of the 5, that challenge has been met, and you have every reason to celebrate by resting, taking a moment to just get your bearings and rest from your exertion of the earlier cards. And then the 7 is a unique card in that it talks about imagination, creative visualization. Everything that has ever been accomplished in this world started with a dream. And that's what the 7 is about, is refining your dream and visualizing yourself living that dream and being able to put that into a tangible form that is a real goal for you to reach. Then we step into the 8s. Now, after the work of the 7, where you are imagining and creatively visualizing the reward of accomplishment, the 8 is like, whoa, let's get busy, let's do it. Let's put this visualization into practice and to work, and it's a manifesting card. It says it's time to launch. I think of the 8 as being very similar in power and message to the ace in the deck. It's a restart. Almost every project that I know of in my life has had several restarts. And so the 8 is that card. That is the restart situation in any situation in your life. And from that restart, we come up to the energy of the 9. And the 9s in the deck are achievement cards, attainment cards. This is the reward for all that work, starting at the ace and progressing all the way through. This is the reward. Now you have accomplished and collected what you intended to do in the very first place. Then the 10 steps in to say, this is it. This is the end of this cycle, and it's time to begin a new cycle. So it's a completion and the beginning of a new cycle. So it's very much a 2-part card, and steps in to be another one of those starting over cards, much like the ace and the 8. The 10 says you've wrapped it up. Everything that you needed to accomplish in the first place has been done. So now it's time to start a new phase. The next project is ready to be embarked upon. And rounding out the minor arcana are the court cards, or the royal families of the deck. And these cards have traditionally carried a meaning of being someone around the individual, the person who's asking a question, and someone who has an influence on their life and behavior. But I'm finding, and I'm learning every time I open the deck and look at it, but I'm finding that more often than not, these cards represent aspects of our own personality and expressions of our own personality. So, at any rate, these cards represent colorful characters in our lives. Whether they are living with us or within us, we have some interesting comments about the energy surrounding the question which brought about the reading in the first place. So, as far as the court cards are concerned, the basic meanings are the page. The page is youthful exuberance and childlike enthusiasm. And I often will use the analogy of taking a 2-year-old to the backyard. Everything is a discovery. Everything is wonderful and new and exciting. And that's the energy of a page. The page is the youngster of the family and encourages us to look at things through a child's eyes again. Be able to get excited about some of the things that we have kind of forgotten in our lives. Then the knight. He's a very masculine figure and represents movement, protection, heroic, battle-ready action. So he's actually bringing an energy of conquering any fear and jumping into battle and protecting the rest of the family, the rest of the realm, but being someone who is taking action and boldly and fearlessly taking action. Then the queen steps up with her feminine power, her intuitive nature. Oh boy, and she can be somewhat manipulative too. But all of these are just tools of the trade for her. So she's a very feminine, perhaps more, has a softer approach to things, especially when compared to the knight. She's got a softer approach to things, but her methods are just as effective and sometimes even more effective. So we have a great deal of respect for the queen because she actually wields a lot of power. And then finally the king steps up, and the king is masculine energy again. He's very focused. He's very firm. He is, as I always say, willing to make the rules and enforce them. And while his approach may be a bit more assertive, even aggressive at times, he is also capable of being a listener and being a nurturing presence as well. So those are the basic ideas of the meanings of each of the minor arcana cards. Now, I wrote a little something about demonstrating the system in a real application. So using your own deck, look at the suit of cups. And if you have a moment when you're working with this, separate that suit of cups out from the rest of the deck. And we'll begin to work our way through it. Now, I used the Robin Wood deck, the imagery on the Robin Wood deck, to give me this kind of insight. And I think most decks are going to reflect it to some degree. So, the story begins with the ace. Now, remember, cups are about emotions and relationships. So if you kind of think of two people just noticing each other. So that's what the ace is about. The first time that you notice that person and realize that you'd like to know them a little better. So that's what the ace is about. That initial recognition that, ooh, I'm interested. That initial spark is the ace. And then the two. The two is that moment when you make that very first call or first message to ask the new person if they are as interested in meeting you as you are interested in meeting them. So that's making the connection. So the 2 of Cups that's what that's representing, is that connection. Then the 3. The 3 is your third date, and you're getting to know each other. Both of you seem to be enjoying the company of the other. So you, as I said at the beginning, you have already kind of noticed that you've made some progress. You've noticed where you've been. Now you're kind of looking forward to, okay, where's this going? By the time you get to the 4, you are beginning to realize that this once new person in your life is becoming a very important part of your daily routine. So all of a sudden, things have shifted a little bit from just being interested to, oh, wow, this might be the one. Then, just to interject some reality, you arrive at 5. That is your first disagreement. The first time you realize that your new love is not perfect after all. Up until this point, you've been able to rationalize just about anything about their behavior, but this time it's come home to roost. You can't pretend that there aren't some differeces. So that's just a wake-up call. It's just basically, oh, this isn't perfection after all. There's going to be some work involved. And then the 6. The 6, you've come to accept that no one is perfect, not even yourself. And so you make up knowing that this new relationship is too important to throw away over just a minor disagreement. So this is a recuperation and rejuvenation. Things are getting back to normal, and you've realized that this little scrape that you had back there at 5 it's really not that important. The most important part is the relationship and how you are going to proceed. By the time you get to the 7, you've begun to daydream about what it might be like to spend your life with this person. And you may find yourself making some rather serious plans. That pretty much goes without saying. That's that moment of creative visualization. What would it be like to create, a family? Let's be honest, that's what this is about. What would it be like to create a family with this person? Then at 8, you're looking to the future. You're putting the plans to work. And yeah, this is when you're going to really have that proposal that you're ready to launch. And you're taking this new relationship to the very next level, and maybe beyond. 9 finds you both living the life, enjoying the fruits of this partnership after years of cooperation, and just relishing that feeling of creation and family, achievement and attainment. Then when you finally reach the 10, you have a long history together, and it's now time to pass along your legacy and your accomplishments to a new generation. So that brings you full circle, and it's time to let a new generation take on that role and carry on your legacy. So that's just in a nutshell the Minor Arcana. And as you practice and play with your own deck, you're going to learn a lot more about each of those cards and how they speak to you individually. In the second segment of the Oracle Scroll, we take something of current interest and look at it from a spiritual standpoint. And today, I'm getting a little serious because this is something close to me. So this one is called victim blaming. In our modern world, where we seem to evade and avoid responsibility whenever possible, while at the same time loudly defending our rights and privileges, it has become customary to blame those who are victimized by short-sightedness. So those victims become victims over and over and over again. Now, I'm writing this piece in September of 2018. It's a time when we're watching the confirmation hearings for a place on the Supreme Court. And that confirmation hearing is being complicated by claims of sexual impropriety, which is already prompting some to begin destroying the character of a respected member of academia. Does the gender of the accuser have anything to do with the validity of that claim? Apparently, it does. In another part of our country, we recently witnessed the character assassination of a man of color. A man of color who was shot to death in his own home by a confused white policewoman. Now, before any investigation into the mental state or the motivation of the admitted perpetrator of this tragedy, every effort was made to discredit the victim, contributing to the perception that the victim somehow provoked the attack, or at least didn't respond to verbal commands on cue. Other examples of this egregious practice of shifting the focus away from the responsible parties abound. We see them every single day. They've almost ceased to be news. There are those in the media who trade in this misleading, destructive dialogue. They seek to rally support for their current favorite cause at the expense of innocent people. When it becomes more expedient to disparage the victim for not reporting soon enough or having no witnesses to back up their claims than to extend empathy and compassion, they are the ones being punished for the crimes committed against them. All these negative responses can be traced back to privilege and entitlement. Those in powerful positions, whether they got there through socioeconomic advantage or having been born in the right gender, have the opinion that they are chosen to occupy their elevated positions and that they are required to subjugate all who don't have those same advantages, those same credentials. All lives are measured by their station in the proverbial food chain, in quotes. This is an old biblical principle which states that man is at the top of that food chain, above all the animals, and supports the idea that all animals and some people are deserving of far less due to their heritage or birth order. This law was not to be challenged since it was handed down by a god. Unfortunately, modern society has not evolved beyond this archaic dogma, which gets reinforced with each sermon or pronouncement from those holding the reins of power. One piece of advice that I give frequently, in fact, probably just about everyone who's ever sat for a reading with me has heard me say, question everything you know, especially those things that you know for sure. If it's something you've never felt comfortable challenging, or something that you have been advised that you must accept and embrace, then allowing that belief to go unchallenged is the very thing that is holding you back. Here in the United States, we are lucky enough to have experienced life under a political system which may be the fairest and most balanced of any in the world. It's not perfect. Nothing that man has ever done is perfect, but it's closer than most. Nearly 250 years ago, a group of enlightened men, while far from perfect, devised a system of governance which extended freedoms to many disadvantaged groups. And yet, it still didn't make every human equal. It took a step, but it was just a step. Even with all the checks and balances that were put in place by those founding fathers, this system is in very grave danger. We have one opportunity, and one opportunity alone, to save ourselves from the evils of bigotry, hatred, sexism, racism, misogyny, and just overall division that keeps us all pitted against each other. That opportunity comes with our ballot in this most important election. Now, I called this one an important election. They're all important. That might be something we just need to correct in our way of thinking, is it's time to start considering them all to be important. We must vote. We must vote. And we must vote for reason, caring, compassion, social awareness, or we risk losing everything. We risk losing it entirely for at least one lifetime and maybe even beyond. We simply cannot stand idly by while our free society is shredded to bits before us. Now, I'm aware that some will not appreciate what I've just said as far as being involved and getting involved politically, but it truly is every bit as important as I've indicated. And there's a saying that's going around, it's a slogan that says, vote as if your rights depended upon it. And they do, because they do depend upon it. So we are in that unique position of being able to do something for ourselves and something for our fellow men with just that simple ballot, ticking off the boxes that indicate exactly what we envision as spiritual people, a world of compassion and caring and looking out for all of us, not just those who have managed to buy their position. Well, thank you for joining us for episode 28 of the Oracle Scroll. The Oracle Scroll is now available on most of your favorite platforms, and we ask that you please subscribe today, and keep coming back to listen to more. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and YouTube. Sometimes you'll even get us on Facebook when it is cooperating. Now, you can also become a patron of the Oracle Scroll and at the same time earn attractive bonuses for yourself by visiting our Patreon page. And that is Patreon, patreon.com/Kevin Walder. And that will get you to our Patreon page. And I am including a link in the episode notes below that will accompany this audio presentation. Please send all your comments, suggestions, and requests, anything at all, to theoraclesscroll@gmail.com. Be sure to share your experience of your visit with us with your friends and relatives and anyone else who might enjoy what we do here at the Oracle Scroll. And as always, all links to contact options are listed in the episode notes that accompany this audio presentation. And we thank you very much for joining us today for episode 28 and look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Oracle Scroll. Find us on Facebook at The Oracle Scroll. If you wish to send comments, suggestions, or requests, please address them to theoraclescroll@gmail.com.